So, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you one more time. So, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do in this occasion? Well, according to the learning guide, let's check the learning guide and the schedule. According to the schedule, today, the 8th of November, we'll start our next wrap, resultado de aprendizaje. And in this wrap, this activity is divided into parts, is divided into activities. In the presentation in terms of writing and the video presentation in terms of speaking and with a video. So this activity is pretty much the same. It's exactly the same, in fact, but it's divided into parts. Let's remember that in level 4, level 3, level 2, and level 1 until now, we always presented a video presentation. Let's accept the redundancy here. And this video presentation had two components, the written component and the video component, right? In this occasion, for level 5, we are going to divide this situation into parts. In the written part on the first hand and the video part on the second hand. So it's the same activity, but divided into parts. We will have until the 21st of November to present these two activities, as well as the test and the forum if you haven't completed, if you haven't finished presented test or the forum yet. Vale? So the learning guide says, let's go with the learning guide. We need to use the zero and the first conditional. And I'm going to focus a lot in here because we need to use zero and first conditional. Otherwise, the evidence is not going to be completed, and therefore I will have to tell you to complete the evidence again or to remake it again because we need to use zero and first conditional. So today we are going to focus today in the next class, I mean tomorrow, we will focus in simple future tense, and we are going to compare this tense with the future with going to. But next week, next class, I mean, next two classes, we're going to talk about zero and first conditionals. So just to do a quick recap, a quick glance, zero conditional requires a simple present tense and simple present tense. So if simple present tense, then simple present tense. If this happens, if we have this situation, then we have this result. These are all conditionals. So zero conditional is uses in terms of grammar present simple tense and present simple tense. First conditional instead uses first simple present tense, I mean conditional simple present tense, and future simple tense, right? So we need to understand then how simple future tense works, so we can apply, we can use a first condition. ¿Vale? So let's see what the learning guide says. Cuando utilizamos condicionales, hacemos referencia a que una acción depende de otra, siendo la primera condición y la segunda resultado. En todo caso, resultan esenciales cuando se deben plantear escenarios, tanto si son reales como imaginarios, de manera que pueden relacionarse con la expresión de aspiraciones, ideas, planes, sueños, proyectos de una persona. So, we have a condition and we have a result. But let's focus in the evidence. Okay. Para desarrollar esta evidencia adecuadamente se recomienda revisar los contenidos del componente formativo Things I'm Going to Do y la evidencia se describen las acciones correspondientes que conforman a la presente evidencia. So, before we check the evidence, let's take into account what we are going to use as tools in Zayuna. So, if we go to Zayuna and we open our course, so in here, English Word Level 5, we go to actividades de aprendizaje guía and we click in componente formativo things I'm going to do, because this is what the learning guide says. It's going to be useful for our activity, so things I'm going to do. Here, we're going to see that the information in here is based in conditionals, mainly conditionals. We are going to need the future tense in order to understand how to create conditionals. Therefore, our evidence must use conditionals. We cannot accept an activity if this activity doesn't use conditionals. ¿Vale? So as always, this is the information you're going to need to develop your activity. So I strongly suggest you to check this information inside you. ¿Vale? So let's go with the explanation of the evidence. The evidence, according to the learning guide, must be developed this way. La presente evidencia le permite presentar todas esas acciones y actividades que le gustaría hacer o que va a hacer en el futuro, dependiendo de los escenarios en los cuales esté interactuando, enmarcados en un contexto personal, social o laboral. Según lo anterior, elabora una presentación que utilice condicionales zero y first, teniendo en cuenta un plano proyecto que le gustaría llevar a cabo en el futuro a corto o largo plazo. Vamos a presentar esta evidencia con alguna herramienta digital como PowerPoint, Geniali, Prezi, etc. ¿Qué necesitamos? Diapositiva de portada y diapositivas de las actividades que le gustaría hacer en el futuro, con imágenes, textos cortos, etc., con al menos 5 slides. ¿Vale? So this is the activity we are going to present in this occasion. This is activity number 3, because activity number 4, and we can mention it since now. Activity number 4 is the same. This exactly evidence, but mentioned or read by you in video, and that's it. This is what you have to present for activity number 4. Number 3 and number 4, of course. So once again, it's something similar we used to make in level 4, 3, 2, and 1, but in this occasion, this evidence is divided in 2. That's it. That's everything you need to know, you need to remember. ¿Vale? Okay, so let's go with the explanation of future simple tenses, because this is what we are going to need to as a base to understand how to create conditionals. So to talk about futures, we have many futures, many possibilities of talking about futures, because we can use simple present tense, present progressive, future with future will, future going to, and these are simples because we also have a future continuous, a future perfect, future perfect continuous, and we also have passive voice, because all of these are in active voice. So because there are many ways to present the future, we are going to focus in 2 ways to predict the future. So these 2 ways to predict the future are will and going to. In terms of grammar, we will check the grammar in a moment, but first, let's see the difference in terms of usage between both of them. I mean, why are they important? Why are they used? We're going to use will when we want to express a spontaneous decision. In this case, we are having decisions with will and going to. Decisions for a future that's normally close or near. So we're going to use will to predict, to mention that something's going to happen in the future in terms of our decision. And this decision hasn't been decided. It's spontaneous. It hasn't been planned. So the typical example is, you're in a restaurant, and in this restaurant, you know that you want to eat pasta, right? But there are many options of pasta. So you can eat pasta alla carbonara, penne alla puttanesca, pasta with meatballs, and so on. So I don't really understand how. I don't really like pasta, so this is what I guess, or lasagna, let's suppose. So let's suppose that. So you see the menu and you say, okay, I eat this plate. So you will, you use the verb will to make a spontaneous decision. So this is the future will. Going to also is also used to talk about decisions, but these decisions have been already planned, have been decided with in advance. You already have a background, right? You have had some time to think what to do. So you're expressing a decision in the future, right? It's some, but this decision has been planned with anticipation. This is the difference. Second difference, or second situation, or second parallel, even better. Will and going to are used to express predictions, to predict something that's going to happen in the future. That's pretty obvious, right? But will is used to talk about a prediction based on a personal experience or personal opinions. So this is very subjective. In my opinion, I guess, I think, in my experience, this will happen. Meanwhile, going to base its prediction in terms of evidence, taking into account numbers, facts, truth. So, according to the statistics, this is going to happen. According to the meteorologist, it's going to rain in 2 hours. According to the data, according to the facts, this is going to happen in 2 days, next month, next week, I don't know, right? This is the difference between will and going to, I mean, the second parallel. And the third parallel is that will is used to express something that's going to happen in the future, but normally in a long-term period, right? I mean, we have to wait this a long period of time. So normally, not always, but normally. Meanwhile, going to is expressed to mention to predict something that's going to happen in the future, but in the short term. So it's very close. It's going to be easy to predict. So we have more a probability of success by predicting this future, right? So this is the difference between, or the parallel between will and going to. But in general terms, I mean, this is something to take into account if we want to be thorough, we want to be very specific, right? Because if we want to be a little relaxed, will and going to are they can exchange each other, so we can use the first or the other, and the result is going to be pretty much the same. So you don't have to be worried if you need to use will or going to. If you want to be very thorough, I mean, if you want to be very Nazi grammar in this case, all right. But if you want to be relaxed, both are correct. So in general terms, we could say, I think it will be foggy, or I think it's going to be foggy, and there's no significant difference between both expressions, both mentions, ¿vale? So let's go with the structure. For going to, the future with going to is going to take into account the present continuous tense. And let's remember that present continuous tense is very similar to Spanish. For example, in Spanish we say, nosotros estamos trabajando. We are working. Mariana no está viendo televisión. Mariana is not watching television. ¿Está usted jugando fútbol? Are you watching, playing football, soccer, for example? So it's pretty similar to Spanish in terms of organization. So with present continuous, we have two verbs, verb to be and the main verb, right? And we use this to predict the future too, but we are not going to focus in that in this moment. So the difference between present continuous tense and future with going to is going to be very subtle, because we are not going to use just two verbs. Instead, we are going to use three: the verb to be, the main verb, and going to. And it's going to be pretty much the same. The organization is pretty much the same. It's even similar to Spanish. For example, yo voy a ver una peli. I am going to. This going to is like a voy a, va a, vamos a, van a, va a. Yeah, this kind of the translation. So, I am going to watch a movie in the cinema. Voy a ver una película yo en el cine. So, the organization is pretty much the same. So, we have to take into account that if we take a base, the present continuous tense, we are going to add another verb that's going to be going to, right? And this is coming before or in the middle, even better, in the middle of, or even better, between the other two verbs. I mean, between the verb to be and between the main verb. Between the main verb to be and the main verb. So the main verb, it's going to be in its base form, it's its basic form without conjugation, its verb form in infinitive if you prefer, because going to it's already having the ending on ing. So that's what you have to take into account in terms of structure. To create negative sentences, going to is going to come after the negative word, I mean this after not. And for questions, it's going to come before the main verb. That once again is not going to have the conjugation ing. So that's everything you need to know. Once again, it's pretty similar to present continuous. It's almost the same. The only difference is that you are going to add another word, another couple of words, going to. And going to is going to come before the main verb. So this is it. This is everything you need to know in terms of grammar. ¿Vale? What about will? We are going to use will for many reasons. We already mentioned the parallel between will and going to, and we already mentioned some reasons why we study future will, right? We're going to focus a little more in the reasons why we study the future will. We're going to use future will to take spontaneous decisions. We already mentioned that. The typical example is, once again, you're in a restaurant and you want to eat something delicious, but everything in the menu is delicious, so you choose option A, right? So this is something spontaneous. Also to give orders, I'm not going to focus a lot in this because this is not very common. To make invitations, once again, this is not very common. It's used to make invitations, especially in an indirect way. And these other two are the most important, I mean, in terms of use. To predict the future, we already mentioned this, but we are predicting the future without real evidence. We are predicting the future taking into account our opinions, reality, or experience. So I think, in my opinion, taking into account what I have lived, I think something will happen, right? And finally, we use future simple tense, I mean future will, to make promises, offers, requests, and threats. But the main reasons, I mean, we use future will especially to predict the future, to make promises, and to take spontaneous decisions. There are more reasons, but these are the most important reasons. ¿Vale? How does this work? We're going to make a parallel between future simple tense and future will. ¿Vale? In simple present tense, we needed a person who performs an action. For example, Marcos works. We drink we are drinking a beverage. We drink a beverage every single day. At 4 p.m., we always drink chocolate at 4 p.m. Let's suppose it, or tea, right? We need a person who perform an action or group of people who perform an action. With future simple tense will, future will, we're going to need the same resources. We need a person who performs an action. But this action, because this action is going to be performed in the future, we need to make an additional change. We're going to add a word, and this word is going to be called will, and will is going to come before the main verb. So the translation of will is going to be something like a re, ras, ran, remos, ra, trabajaré, trabajarás, trabajarán, trabajaremos, trabajará, right? So this by itself cannot be understandable. This word needs to be accompanied, must be included, must come with the main verb, right? Because if we don't use it, the meaning is not going to be understandable, right? For negative sentences, we remember that in simple present tense we use an auxiliary verb, do not or does not. The same happens for questions, right? Do or does. The difference is in the location, right? Because we needed an auxiliary verb. Do for I, we, you, they, and does for he, she, it. For negative sentences and questions. So for negative sentences, the auxiliary verb includes the negative form, right? In negative sentences for future will, we're going to do something similar because we're going to have the auxiliary verb, in this case it's going to be will, and this is going to take the modification of the negative word. I mean, this is going to be conjugated as will not or the contraction won't to create a negative sentence. So that's why we are not going to have a modification in the main verb, neither in affirmative sentences nor in negative sentences or questions, okay? Because the main verb is not going to be modified. Examples of affirmative and negative sentences. I forgot to mention this. For example, this is a promise in affirmative sentence. For example, when you call to your cell phone company, whatever it is, they, because you are having an issue, they say, we will do our best to help you to solve this issue as soon as possible, right? They are making a promise. For example, with a negative sentence, this is an order. You will not see him again. You will not go out at 11 p.m. Right now with your friends because you are 7 years old. So it's not the time yet for you to go out alone. Not yet, right? Negative sentence. And for questions, let's remember in simple present tense that we use the auxiliary verb at the beginning of the question. So it comes at the beginning. The same happens in future will. We use the word will at the beginning of the question to create, once again, the question. So this is everything you need to know in terms of grammar to create the future will. Let's remember that the reasons why we study future will, there are several reasons, but the most important reasons why we study future will is to talk about to make promises, to predict the future without evidence. I mean, in taking into account just experience and opinions, and finally to take spontaneous decisions. Meanwhile, future with going to is used to express predictions, to mention predictions, but based in evidence, to express that something's going to happen in the future, but in the long term. And finally, to predict plans, that have already been thought, have already been planned. We have already decided what to do in the, I don't know, next week, next month, tomorrow, at 7 p.m. today, and so on. Vale? In terms of grammar, future with going to, it's pretty much the same as a present continuous. But the only difference, or the main difference, not the only, the main difference is that we are going to work not with two verbs, but three, because we have the verb to be, we add the word going to, and the main verb is going to be in its basic or bare or infinitive form. So this is it for this session, for today's lesson. And that will be all. As always, if you have questions, don't hesitate, in fact, to contact me through WhatsApp, sorry, not WhatsApp, through Sayuna or via email. ¿Vale? Thank you very much for coming. I wish you an excellent day, guys. Take care.